If anybody asked me, where's home, I would say Stehekin without even thinking about it. Very few people live there, but it's easy to fall into companionship once you step off the boat dock. It's as if you're welcomed into a very friendly place by the people, by the surroundings. A sense of comfort and a sense of belonging that's easy to find in Stehekin.
The valley itself seemed to draw and collect characters, and if you weren't a character, you needed to be.
Living in Stehekin, you have to have a certain amount of self-reliance, but also if someone needs help and someone knows how to do something, there's always willingness for people to help.
People always watched out for each other.
People always talk about the mountains being how quiet it is. And to me, it's really not. It's louder than it is in a city. Because if you really listen, there's always wind, there's always water, there's always something going on, and you maybe just have to listen for it. And then there's the sound if you go up to Horseshoe Basin. All of the cascades that rim the basin coming down, and it's just amazing how much water is continually flowing all across that rim. And I think exploring Stehekin, it always reminded me kind of like when you were a kid and going Easter egg hunting. There's always a surprise right around the next corner. And even if you'd been up the same trail one time, many times, or whatever, it's one of those things that you can know pretty well, but never know completely.
In Stehekin, it just was the way through to these high alpine meadows and passes. It's just such a great feeling. I mean, it's coming home.
I was intrigued with anybody that lived in Stehekin. I think I sought out anybody that was close to my own age. And Billy just lived down the hill from us. My mother used to always say she knew where we were because she could hear us laughing so much.
I had gotten a photographic copy of the Pierce expeditions from Malcolm Keithley. And the interest started there. And because we were always frontier type, reading the old frontier type books and stuff, it blended into that lifestyle so well.
We used the Lieutenant Pierce expedition and would note how he had traveled through. I think he made a trip all the way over to the Skagit Valley, going over Cascade Pass, which was traditionally the Indian passageway to get from central Washington to the Skagit Valley. Seems like everything we did, we were looking for treasure of some sort. And so if we had been there 100 years earlier, 50 years earlier, we probably would have been those crazy prospectors going around.
You've got to realize that there wasn't a lot of people to socialize with, and Paul Bergman was coming down to the photo shop, especially in the spring, to tint pictures. And it was just natural to wind up in the photo shop. And eventually he'd explain what he was doing, and pretty soon I found out I was really an expert at it. remember the smell of the turpentine, how you'd wipe down the print, black and white print, and then take out the tinnings and mixing the colors to get different greens and different blues. And I started out with a camera borrowed from my dad, an Argosy. And then I bought one of Bergman's Pentax camera, and I bought that from him.
Well, when I was away from Stehekin and would think about the friendship that I had with Billy Sullivan, they were always such fun memories because they elicited remembrances of such a great childhood, of being able to move up and down that valley road and up and down the trails and everything with such great freedom. And it was so much better to do something with a buddy than by yourself. We'd sit there and on the dock and look out across the lake and see a point of interest over there and ponder it for a long time, and before you knew it, would be in the boat and up on that adventure trying to find something. But that was the fun part, was just searching and looking and going and doing. And so I always thought of Billy in those terms of just having a heck of a lot of fun.
The Keithley boys, and they were my best friends, and we had so many experiences together that every time I'd think of an experience and go to tell my son about the adventures and things, I always brought him up. We always had enough time to read up on anything we were going to do and learn from those that went before us.
Ray Courtney was always really willing to share his knowledge. Taught me the best way to start fires and that type of thing. And of course, Harry Buckner, who was the postmaster. Billy Sullivan and I used to bug him to death to tell us old stories. And he was happy to oblige. He was a good storyteller.
Because Guy Imus needed to hire help during the summer, he sort of started me off young with the horses, taking me up on trips, starting out simply by babysitting the tourists. And then in the fall, when the hunting season came, the hunters coming in and taking them up to their hunting camps and familiarizing with the area and how to pack the horses so you wouldn't wind up throwing a pack or losing a horse and stuff like that.
Billy stayed in Stehekin longer than I did after I went to college. Then I kind of stayed on the outside to work, and Billy stayed up lake in Stehekin for a number of years after that. Yeah, I think the times we were off doing other things, when finally meet up again, things were pretty much similar. Same interests remained the same. Billy was very much into still documenting the high country with his camera. And that was always interesting to find out where he had been and what he had seen, and he could show us the photographs and tell about his experiences up in the high country. And then I guess it was a job that really took him away to the west side of Washington for quite some time. And of course, during all that time too, I was probably in Los Angeles and then back here in Washington State. And remember telling my brother that he had asked, since I still am out here in Washington State, whether I'd ever run across Billy again. And I said, well, I've got his phone number, but I don't haven't called him yet. And he wanted to know why. And I said, well, I'm just afraid that maybe he's changed an awful lot, or maybe I've changed an awful lot. And if we were to meet up again, maybe we wouldn't have anything to say to each other. And so purposely, for many, many years, I never did make that phone call.
I didn't realize how much I missed the Keithley boys, really, until I had correspondence with them again and seeing Mickey again. I ran into him at Stehekin, and there he was, and I wouldn't recognize him, and I kept wondering, this person knows so much about Stehekin, and I was listening to him, and I said, who is he? Who is he? And I couldn't figure it out.
I think the funniest thing about meeting Billy after all those years was I didn't recognize him. I don't think he recognized me either for the first few moments. But after I studied him for a bit, yeah, that's the same old Billy. But yeah, we immediately started talking about same interests. And I did the same thing that I think Billy did when he saw some other old friends. I hugged him right away without even thinking. He didn't know who I was and why I was hugging him.
Having been out of Stehekin for so many years, to see your old friends is just priceless. It's and then having the same interests, like history and photography and we just, even apart, we were going down the same roads, and then to get involved in different projects, it's like we could fit in hand in glove. I was still able to do hard hiking into the high ridges and spend a week at a time, but I had no skill and talents on the other end of it, and it was just like we were kids again. We both fed off from each other. There was some reason that was constantly taking the paths that, like I took, and I was trying to grab for a piece of what I used to have, and then to come back and relive my childhood. I hiked all the trails and camps and lakes that I did as a child in one season at Steve, and all the drainages and then I decided to do it with 35 millimeter, and I'm modest when I say I'm really great with 35 millimeter. But when Malcolm showed me that there was cameras, movie tape cameras, and now high definition, I was so excited because I'd seen and taken pictures, and there was no excuse to go back and take them again with 35 millimeter. Here I had new material or equipment, and I could capture not only the sounds, but the action of waterfalls. I'd wait, and when the windy days would come, I was so mad because 35 millimeter, I couldn't get the flowers and stuff to stand still long enough to get good pictures. And now when I go up there, to be able to capture the movement of it, and shoot, at times you're having flies fly across the lens and stuff, but I actually enjoy taking pictures of them now.
Well, actually, I think well he had already planned on hiking the Cascades for several summers in a row, and had already spent, I think, the previous summer going up and taking still pictures. And when I started talking to him about it, I suggested, how about a video camera? And he had never had any experience with video cameras, but he's a superb still photographer, and he just immediately volunteered to take a video of his trips.
Oh boy, oh boy. Nothing funner than this. Trapper Lake. Scared me half to death going in. Climbing up over the slick rocks. Fell a couple times. Minor. You get into Trapper Lake here. No real trail, some flagging. I spent the first night on the shore line. Nice photographs in the morning, but had poured all night. And here it is, pouring again. I'm all set up in my tent, and I've cooked me up my favorite Mountain House spaghetti. Man, this stuff is good. And ready for another long, long night of raining. We'll see what happens. It wasn't work. It seems like it's what I've been building up to do all this time. Seems like the training from our youth, learning to trap in the winter, to survive nature, to go out even in the mountains alone, to feel comfortable, to find the locations. It's like business, location, location, location. You need to know where the locations are. I was so surprised by, we'd always gone up to Cascade Pass, but I had heard about Sahali Glacier, but it was just one of these hiker things that they wanted. I mean, you had to gear up to climb on a glacier. But I had spent a day at Cottonwood and another just below Cascade Pass. Then I had gone up to Sahali Glacier, and it was amazing. It was a hard hike, a lot of elevation. You're 7,500 foot, and you get up there, and you think you're getting there, far up to the next one, and you can't camp any place but there. And the hikers build their campsites windbreaks completely around it. And there's probably 6-8 of them. And to look over there, I thought I was in Peru or something, or the Aztec Indians had been up there and had built these surrounded windbreaks and shelters. And you get such a wonderful view. and it was full moon for 2 nights, and sunrises, sunsets, great sunsets. And the wildlife up there surprised me. I guess with so many people, the mountain goats, they let you almost walk right up to them. And the whistling marmots, they come up to your legs and actually nibble on your legs. Oh boy, don't get funner than this.
Surprised your mother let you loose.
It's not that many days if you say 52, but these were 52 attempts to take pictures in picture-perfect days. And there's a lot of great days of Stehekin. But when the gray clouds come up and they cast the gray lights to wash out the flowers, there's pictures there, but it's not the magic that I was looking for. And so when the weather was poor, I could rest up for the next trip or gear up for the next trip. But when I could look at the weather reports that are so good now and could hope for 5-6 days at a time of good weather, that's when I take off and go. And you always have to hike at least one full day to get into the alpine country. And that's where it happens. Using another excuse, going back over that same country that I was taking 35 millimeter with and taking, I honestly call it magic. It's not my magic, it's nature. And when I get up to the lakelets above Rainbow Lake and the tamarack are brilliant yellow, and there's a touch of snow on the ground and it's sparkling. The lakelets are freezing up and it's icy, casting images of Bowen Peak in the background. It gives me an excuse to be at so many of these great places again. You were out there, and Mother Nature was never always kind, and there was always danger, and what you could learn from people that went before you, the history and stuff, always gave you an edge. I hiked 2 days into a valley, and I've sat there and I've had to wait 2 more days before there's a picture. And you have to be patient. If the quality isn't there, you can't take it. And when it happens, it might only happen, maybe the light conditions might only happen for 15 minutes, and they're gone. And you're going to say, well, next year I'm going to come back to this flowered valley and I'm going to set up. Guess what? I went back to that same flowered valley and it wasn't there this year. It was last. So you got to be there, and you got to be there. The beauty of the alpine country. And it just, you can take a still picture, and that's what we did. But it never equaled the experience you actually could have. And there was times that were just totally magical, and because no sound, no movement, when I found out that I could capture movement and sound, I couldn't believe it. It was movie or film or tape is just so magical. You can capture so much more. But now when I go into the hills, I want the wind to blow the flowers around. I want the little tiny creek that meanders down a little draw with the little pockets of flowers along the side of it. Animals are a little different. They're sort of like children. They always stick their finger in their nose or something when you go to take a picture. And when you're out alone on a hillside or a mountain or a ridge, and you spend the night in the open and look up, and on the ridge tops, we'd lay out our sleeping bags on canvas tarps and watch the stars at night, and they were so bright and brilliant, and it made you realize how large the universe is. It was hard to leave the alpine country. Coming back from the mountains, you look ahead and, gee, you're no longer a hermit. There are actually some people in the valley. And coming back from a trip, there's, supplies, fresh food. Like, I can go to the bakery and get bacon goods. You can go to the Valley Ranch and eat all you can and actually get full.
I remember just sitting down at the landing near the dock, and from there you can look up the valley to all the peaks, Boston, Booker, and Buckner Mountains. And Billy and I used to daydream about spending an entire summer hiking all the trails and taking a camera with us, and then making some sort of a film about it so we could share it with people who have never been up there and probably never will get up there. Well, about 50 years have passed, and I still haven't gotten to all those places with a camera, but Billy has now, and he's made all those trips in a summer, and he's brought the tapes back down, and now we really can share them with other people and tell the story about it.